Let's bring in Josh Skule now, Senior Vice President, Risk Advisory and Consulting Services at Allied Universal. He was formerly Assistant Director for the FBI, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Joshua, thank you for your time. If inauguration passes off peacefully, will Trump's base remain a threat? And should law enforcement go as far as to classify them as domestic terrorists?
So, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I would say that the inauguration will go off without a hitch. There's the requisite amount of security forces, something we haven't seen in a long time, deployed to the Washington, D.C. As far as the extremists on the right or the extremists on the left, I think that is something that law enforcement, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security will have to continue to appropriately monitor to make sure that any hint of violence in any of the cities inside the United States are appropriately mitigated.
So, Joshua, we've got the numbers, right? Boots on the ground, National Guard, at least 20,000 of them, plus a lot more in terms of security police, et cetera. We've got a perimeter of sorts established as well. I mean, D.C. is basically on lockdown right now. My question to you is, how do security officials control this whole idea of a fifth column? That is, the whole idea that the Capitol riots were an inside job. You got to start thinking about which side a lot of folks are on, whether they're in the Guard, in the police, or Senate or House staffers or lawmakers themselves. I mean, how do you police that?
So, first of all, as far as an inside job, I mean, I've seen a lot of reporting. I also know there were several police officers arrested as a part of taking that, as well as several former military members taking part in the attack on our Capitol. There are almost 1 million police officers, 18,000 police departments inside the United States. The vast majority, in my experience, looking to keep their citizenry safe, taking their oath of office very, very seriously. So I think like anybody, when there's a threat of violence as it is associated with an attack, whether it's on the Capitol or a rhetoric of violence on social media, and somebody is a part of law enforcement or the military, the FBI takes those very, very seriously and will investigate appropriately and take steps with their state, local, federal partners to mitigate those threats.
Joshua, question remains, how can one of the most supposedly secure locations in the United States, if not the world, be breached? And why did the chain of command within the Capitol Police collapse entirely? Did that suggest complicity or sheer incompetence? And what were the lessons learned?
So there's nothing that leads me to believe that there was any complicity in the chain of command at the Capitol Police. I think there's an investigation going on to see why the barricades were constructed, why the requisite amount of resources weren't appropriate, and further, what information was shared regarding this threat. Clearly, we know now that this was not a protest and then spontaneously charging the Capitol. We know that there were folks that there were people that were there who had pre-planned. They brought weapons, they brought flex cuffs, and there was an intent to breach the Capitol. Why that wasn't taken more seriously, I think the investigation will bear that out. And certainly, as a result of that, which is horrible, then our nation is on high alert. And while the reporting was there were going to be protests in every city this weekend, the information sharing from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security with state and local law enforcement allowed them to be able to put the requisite resources around their state capitals to ensure something like that didn't happen outside of Washington, D.C.
Joshua, this may sound nitpicky, but just as a practical matter, boots on the ground, 20,000 guard. If I remember correctly, I mean, D.C. obviously is not a state, right? And I was reading somewhere that D.C. Guard, when they're called out, it's not Muriel Bowser who's actually in charge. It's actually the sitting president. Is that true as far as you know? And two, the 20,000 guard we're talking about on the ground, the composition, where are they from? Do we know?
I think they're from the National Guard are from all over. I had seen reporting that they'd come from Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland. So they are from all over the country in order to make sure that the district is protected. I don't know the chain of command for the National Guard, unfortunately. I know that the mayor likely does not have the authority to call them out. I know there was pre-planning done prior to, and there was requests during the assault on our Capitol where the Maryland and Virginia State Police deployed, but the National Guard was lagging. And I think our investigation being done by the FBI will bear out what happened in that failure to deploy in a timely manner.
Joshua, very quickly, if you may, if Trump is impeached, then is there a risk that it radicalizes his base?
So I think going forward, we have to examine the entirety of what has happened this year, whether it is left-wing extremists or right-wing extremists. And you have to, what we do to help companies out is make sure that you're analyzing the threats that are appropriate to your location and your people, and law enforcement and intelligence organizations are doing the exact same. Is there going to be a flashpoint that is going to cause one side or the other to actually rally or protest? Generally, there will be indications of that on social media. Certainly, we are seeing or we'll be hearing about other nation states fanning the seeds of hate on social media in order to exacerbate those threats, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or other places. So I think looking at, while atrocious and horrific on the Capitol, I don't think that one can look at that in isolation based on all of the protests and the violence that's gone on over the last year.
Got it. Listen, Joshua, fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. Great value there. Joshua Skule, Allied Universal, also former AD at the FBI.